Most people go through life convinced they are thinking, but they aren't. They are merely reacting, repeating, and internalizing. They scroll, they condemn, they talk all without a moment's pause. Nobody shows you how to think with clarity in your schooling, not in our culture, not even when clear thought is most critical. Yet, without it, you aren't truly liberated. You're simply running on another person's code, moving to another person's rhythm. In this episode, we will shatter that mold. We will reconstruct your mind, piece by piece, the Stoic way. No distractions, no pride, only truth. Because when your mind truly belongs to you, you can never be controlled again. 1. Most people don't think, they react. The typical person operates in a state of perpetual mental autopilot. They scan headlines and adopt opinions without investigation. They hear a piece of gossip and spread it without verification. They are angered before seeking to understand, defensive before they listen, and reactive before they reflect. The majority of what we label thinking is just a blend of emotional reactivity, cognitive laziness, and social imitation. But the Stoic recognizes this for the perilous illusion it is. Genuine thinking is methodical, it's intentional, it's chronicle, it's gradual, it's challenging, and that is precisely why so few engage in it. We are brought up in a world that prizes swiftness over substance. You get praised for quick comebacks, hot takes, and rapid decisions, not for deep contemplation. But reaction is not thought. It is the void where thought should be. It's the space where fear, routine, and conditioning seize control. And in that space, we give up our freedom. Epictetus stated, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." But how can you select your reaction if you don't first pause to grasp what is happening? Let's be frank. Pausing is difficult. Thinking deeply is difficult. It involves fighting the impulse to leap to conclusions. It involves tolerating uncertainty, posing questions, and sometimes conceding that you do not know. In a culture fixated on appearing self-assured, "I don't know" sounds like defeat. In reality, it is the dawn of wisdom. The Stoic does not rush to judgment. He teaches himself to halt, to breathe, to contemplate. His clarity is forged not from speed, but from stillness. If someone offends him, he doesn't just react, he asks, "Why does this bother me? What am I attached to that gives these words influence?" When confronted with a tough choice, he doesn't grab for the simplest solution. He assesses what is in line with his values, what will be significant in the long run. This is thinking, not reacting, and it is this self-control, this readiness to think slowly in a world that hurries, that renders the Stoic unconquerable. You see, clarity isn't merely about intellect, it's about bravery. The courage to resist the herd, the courage to hold your peace when others are shouting, the courage to sit quietly when noise seems more comfortable. Most never develop this. They exist in mental disarray, governed by the strongest emotion of the instant. But you can train yourself differently, where you can begin this very moment. Ask yourself, when did I last truly scrutinize my thoughts? Not just echo them, but challenge them. Not just react to events, but probe my own patterns, my assumptions, my core beliefs. If the answer is rarely or never, that is your signal. That is your beginning, because until you take back your own thoughts, you are not genuinely living. You are being lived. So today, start to slow down the process. Don't reply so quickly. Don't argue so hastily. Don't presume you have all the answers. Let discomfort be your guide. If a question makes you uneasy, lean into it. Let that be your work. The Stoic doesn't shrink from hard questions, he welcomes them. Because on the other side of that reflection lies freedom. And true freedom starts not with an action, but with an awareness. 2. A noisy mind is an untrained mind. Have you ever tried sitting in silence only to discover your own mind is more clamorous than any outside sound? That isn't tranquility. It's internal chaos, masquerading as productivity. An untrained mind becomes a room with dozens of radios all blaring different stations at once. Every frequency vies for your focus. Regrets about yesterday, anxieties about tomorrow, task lists, imaginary arguments, judgments, desires, and worries. No clarity can survive in such a state. No wisdom can penetrate that din. And yet, this is how most people live, day in and day out. Confusing, relentless mental chatter with clear thought. The Stoic, however, sees this for what it is, distraction, not depth. There's a reason Marcus Aurelius often began his meditations in quietude. He wasn't composing for an audience. He was disciplining his own mind to impose order on his thoughts, to bring focus to the chaos. Because a mind left untrained does not serve you, it enslaves you. It captures your attention and flings it toward every external prompt. But a trained mind, a still mind, becomes your most powerful asset. It becomes the citadel where you discover strength, wisdom, and purpose. Particularly when the external world descends into madness, we tend to view noise as something external, the notifications, the news cycle, the chatter of others. But the truest noise, the most destructive kind, is the internal kind. It's the incessant mental monologue that runs unchecked, the narrative that never ceases, the inner critic that never rests. And since we hear it constantly, we accept it as normal. but normal is not the same as healthy. The Stoic doesn't aim for normal, he strives for mastery. And mastery starts with silence. Picture your mind for a second as a still pool of water. Each thought, each distraction, each concern is a pebble tossed into it. The more pebbles, the more ripples. The more ripples, the blurrier the view to the bottom. But in stillness, the water settles. You start to perceive what lies underneath. Your principles, your true intentions, your purpose. This is what Stoicism trains you for, not to eliminate every thought, but to become the serene observer beneath them. Not to kill the noise, but to stop being controlled by it. This is why disciplines like meditation, journaling, or even mindful breathing are fundamental to the Stoic journey. They aren't spiritual novelties. They are practical tools for restoring order to the mind. And through this order, we regain our power. A noisy mind is impulsive, reactive, and weak. A quiet mind is intentional, focused, and resilient. So, how do you start to quiet this noise? Begin by simply noticing it. Each time your focus wanders, pause. Each time you feel the pull to react, to check, to fix something, breathe. Forge a space between the stimulus and your response. That space is where your clarity is found. And with practice, that space expands. You begin to notice things that others miss. You begin to hear the quiet truths underneath the surface static. You begin to guide your mind instead of being led by it blindly, Epictetus said. No man is free who is not master of himself. That mastery doesn't start with power over others, but with power over your own attention, your own thinking over the internal noise you've been taught to accept. But the Stoic doesn't accept chaos. He transforms it. He disciplines his mind until silence becomes his strength, until stillness becomes his weapon, until the most chaotic room in the world cannot disturb the calm he has cultivated within. So, the next time your thoughts feel like a storm, remember that the noise isn't you. It's a signal, a call for stillness, a reminder that genuine clarity never shouts, it whispers. And if you get quiet enough, you might just hear it. Point 3. Emotions distort perception. When emotions rise, clarity fades. This is a reality most people overlook, not because they doubt it, but because the feeling itself consumes them so entirely they cannot see past it. Anger persuades you of your righteousness. Fear assures you the worst is coming. Sadness murmurs that things will never improve. In the grip of an emotion, your perception narrows. The world is warped, as if viewed through a shattered lens, but if you wait long enough, if you fight the impulse to act on the feeling, you'll begin to see something profound. Your thoughts were not wrong. They were just incomplete. The Stoics did not shun emotion. They analyzed it. They understood it was not a weakness to feel, but it was a danger when feeling went unchecked. Seneca cautioned, "The most powerful is he who has himself in his own power." This means understanding the gap between feeling an emotion and being defined by it, between noticing the anger and letting it steer your actions. That distinction is everything. Consider the last time you felt deeply wounded or terrified. In that instant, did you think with clarity? Did you search for truth, or did you search for validation? Emotion has a tendency to shrink our awareness. It cherry-picks information and frames events in black and white terms. This is why choices made in the heat of the moment, though they feel justified at the time, frequently lead to later regret. You weren't seeing things as they were. You were seeing them through the filter of a bruised ego or a terrified mind. But a Stoic does something revolutionary. He puts distance between the event and the narrative. He trains himself to pause and wonder, what is another way to see this? He doesn't bury the emotion. He observes it, labels it, and examines it. Because the moment you can name a feeling, you get power over it. I am feeling anger is fundamentally different from I am angry. The first is an observation. The second is an identity. An identity governs action. This clarity is developed through training. It is not an instant change. It is a way of life. You start to see how your mood tints your thoughts. You stop yourself before you react. You write in a journal after a disagreement, not merely to complain, but to comprehend. What was I feeling? Why did I see it that way? What might I have noticed if I weren't so trapped in my story? Marcus Aurelius, arguably the most powerful man of his era, wrote to himself, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment." That is the core of emotional self-mastery, not control by force, but liberation by perspective. And here lies the paradox. When you let yourself experience an emotion fully without fighting it, without running from it, it fades more quickly. What extends suffering is our resistance to it. What fuels chaos is our denial. But to sit with the fire calmly is to starve it of its fuel. You don't become a Stoic by getting rid of emotion. You become one by refusing to be a slave to it. Clarity is not the absence of feeling. It is the capacity to think through it, to hold both the emotion and the rational analysis at the same time. That is how you evolve. That is how you lead. Because life will relentlessly challenge your emotions, but how you think within them will chart the course of your existence. So, the next time you are swamped by jealousy, rage, panic, or sorrow, ask yourself, what am I failing to see clearly right now? What story am I accepting too readily? Then take a step back, breathe, and look again. Because emotion fogs the glass, but reason cleans it. 4. Don't inherit beliefs. Examine them. You entered this world caught in a network of ideas. You didn't select convictions about right and wrong, value and worthlessness, the definition of success, the nature of love, the meaning of failure, how much to say, how long to endure, and how high you could aim. These ideas were passed down from your family, your culture, your religion, your educators, and the media, and you internalized them before you had the capacity to question them. Not because you were foolish, but because you were human. We are designed to conform to our surroundings, to absorb what is around us for our own survival. But at a certain stage, survival is not enough. At a certain stage, you must ask, is this belief genuinely my own, or is it merely a hat? The Stoics held that philosophy was not a set of rules to be memorized, but a continuous practice of self-inquiry. Epictetus advised, don't just say you have read books. Show that through them you have learned to think better. The objective wasn't to parrot another's wisdom, but to forge your own truth through painstaking questioning. And that process begins with the courage to look inward and scrutinize the assumptions that steer your life. Ask yourself, who taught you that your value is tied to your output? That showing vulnerability is a sign of weakness? That you must win every disagreement to command respect? That wealth equates to success? Or that love must be painful to be authentic? These beliefs operate quietly in the background, steering your decisions without your consent. They form your habits, ignite your anxieties, and often trap you in prisons you cannot see. But here's the breakthrough. The moment you grasp that every belief was given to you, not born inside you, you regain the authority to inspect it. You become the curator of your own mind. You don't just discard beliefs carelessly. You hold them up to the light. You ask, is this still helpful? Is it accurate? Does it grant me peace or only add pressure? Sometimes the beliefs that benefited your parents will not benefit your future. Sometimes what was logical in your culture is not what makes you feel complete. The Stoic does not cling to ideas out of tradition. He releases them out of clarity. And clarity is born from honesty, a brutal, uncomfortable, yet liberating. Honesty, you must learn to live by your principles, not by your programming. This means selecting what you believe based on your own experience, logic, and alignment with your core values, not on a fear of being ostracized or a desire for validation. The Stoic mind is not rigid, it's examined, not passive. It's deliberate, and this work is never finished. It changes as your awareness grows. Today you might scrutinize your beliefs about work. Tomorrow it might be about love or suffering or time. The goal isn't to reach a final destination. It's to constantly refine, because your beliefs are the bedrock of your life, and a weak foundation will inevitably crumble under strain. This is not simple work. It demands solitude, contemplation, and the willingness to detach from familiar narratives. But your reward is sovereignty, the power to stand in a room full of noise and still recognize your own truth, to face challenges and remain grounded, to forge your own path not from a place of defiance, but from the recognition that no one else can live this life for you. So, make time to examine the architecture of your own mind. Ask, what have I believed without thinking? And what would my life become if I dared to start thinking now? 5. Thinking is a discipline, not a reaction most individuals think they are. Thinking when they are actually just reacting. A remark angers them, a news story infuriates them, a setback disheartens them, and they mistake this mental flurry for intentional thought. But thinking is not what happens when your feelings get intense. It is what starts when your feelings begin to subside. True thinking, the kind that fosters clarity, purpose, and inner resilience, is a conscious discipline. It requires effort, it requires a framework, it requires stillness, and in a world that praises immediate reaction, this kind of thought has become uncommon but all the more essential. The Stoics did not view thought as a mere reflex, they viewed it as a form of training. Just as a weightlifter builds muscle through consistent exercise, the Stoic disciplines the mind to see with clarity by slowing down, stepping back, and observing before he acts. If you want to improve, wrote Epictetus, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Why? Because in a reactive culture, pausing to think often appears to be a weakness. But that pause is strength. That pause is where wisdom is born. When you rush to act, you bypass the space where clarity might have emerged. You default to old habits, defending your ego, winning an argument, satisfying a momentary impulse. But to think well is to catch yourself before the autopilot engages. It means asking, hold on, what is truly happening here? What is factual? What is important right now? That moment of self-control is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of mastery. You don't cultivate a clear mind by taking in more information. You build it by filtering information more effectively. Not every concept is worthy of your acceptance. Not every emotion is worthy of your obedience. Not every voice is worthy of your focus. The discipline of thinking is the discipline of knowing what to discard. And that is something few people ever learn to do. We scroll, we react, we parrot what we've heard. But when did you last genuinely challenge your own initial thought? Train your mind to pause before it jumps to a conclusion. Teach it to ask, is this useful? Is this wise? Is this even my own thought? Do not settle for the first explanation. Go deeper. Ask why. Ask again. The more layers you uncover, the nearer you get to the truth and the further you get from mere reaction. This discipline, like any other, demands that you embrace discomfort. It is simpler to reply with sarcasm than with genuine curiosity. It is simpler to categorize someone than to understand them. It is simpler to reinforce your biases than to question them. But ease is not the Stoic's goal. Growth is. And growth, it requires mental exertion, not just emotional release. Seneca cautioned against aimlessness. He wrote, "If you don't know which port you're sailing to, no wind is favorable." In essence, if you do not think with clarity, no choice will feel correct because you are not anchored in purpose. Thinking becomes your compass, not your feelings, not your urgency, not your habits, but your deliberate thought. Clear, tested, and self-owned. The mind is a tool. Without sharpening, it becomes ineffective. Without practice, it grows dull. You don't become wise by waiting. You become wise by practicing every day, consistently, and with patience. The world will tempt you with shortcuts. React now, decide quickly, speak louder. But the Stoic takes the slower path, not because he is weak, but because he is in command. So ask yourself today, am I reacting or am I thinking? And if I am not thinking, what truth might I discover? If I finally chose to begin? 6. Truth is not found in opinion, but in observation. We exist in a world fixated on opinions. Everyone holds one. Everyone voices one. And it seems the more loudly a person talks, the more credible their truth appears to be. But an opinion, regardless of how passionately or confidently it's delivered, is not clarity, it is not understanding, and it is certainly not wisdom. The Stoic does not accept what people say at face value, including the chatter inside his own head. He observes, he investigates, he separates what is felt from what is real. Because authentic thinking does not start with a belief, it starts with an observation. Suppose you are lost in a dense, foggy wood. An untrained mind will instantly try to label the shapes it sees. That is danger, that is betrayal, that is failure. But the Stoic does not rush to define the fog. He waits for the fog to clear. He doesn't guess, he looks, creates space for the truth to reveal itself, undistorted by fear or preconceived notions. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If someone is able to show me that what I think or do is not right, I will happily change, for I seek the truth, by which no one was ever truly harmed." That is not the stance of someone trying to win an argument. It is the stance of someone trying to see clearly. Clear thinking involves separating the event itself from your story about it. Did your friend ignore your text? Or did you assume their silence was a rejection? Did you fail, or did you just get feedback from reality? The raw data of life, what truly happened, is almost always neutral. The narratives we weave around it are what generate suffering, shame, and anger. And until we are prepared to deconstruct those narratives, we remain confined by illusions. Most of what we consider truth is simply repetition. We hear something over and over from our parents, from society, from our own fears, and it solidifies into a belief. But repetition does not create reality. The Stoic refuses to accept conclusions without first investigating them. He asks, is this truly a fact? Can I see it for myself in my own life? Or am I just repeating someone else's noise? That is the distinction between living with awareness and living People who are awake don't just ask, what is it that I believe? They ask, why do I believe it? They follow the thought to its origin. And if that origin is bias, or assumption, or old trauma disguised as logic, they do not cling to it. They release it, because the truth is more important than the ego. To build a mind like this, you must become a student of your own life, not a judge, not a critic, but a student. Watch your own actions, note your impulses, observe what agitates you and what soothes you. This is where wisdom is born, not in texts, but in quiet self-observation and the willingness to see without judgment. The Stoics were not emotionless or detached, they were highly attentive. Their clarity was not a product of suppressing emotions, but of examining them. They understood that true insight arises not when we feel less, but when we interpret less. The fewer assumptions we carry, the more clearly we can see what is right in front of us. So, the next time your mind shouts a conclusion, pause. Don't ask, what do I think? Ask, what do I see? Because that tiny shift, that refusal to mistake opinion for observation, is the very foundation of all clear thought. 7. Certainty is often a symptom of ignorance. There is comfort in being certain, in thinking you are correct, in feeling you have solved it all. But that kind of rigid, unbending certainty often stems not from clarity, but from a dread of the unknown. The Stoic does not pursue the mirage of absolute answers. He values awareness over assurance, inquiry over arrogance, because the reality is, the more you genuinely understand, the more you grasp how much you have yet to learn. We have all encountered people who clutch their opinions like a shield. They cannot consider alternative perspectives. They dismiss questions. They speak with great authority but little real understanding. That is not wisdom, it is defensiveness. And behind that barricade of certainty often lies a profound fear of being wrong. Epictetus cautioned us about this. It is impossible to begin to learn that which one thinks one already knows. The ego insists, I am already an expert. But the mind that desires to grow asks, what have I overlooked? You see, certainty can be a prison. Once you are convinced you are right, you cease to explore. You cease to question. You cease to see. Your mind transforms from a classroom into a courtroom, but a Stoic's mind stays open not to everything, but to anything grounded in reason. He does not fear doubt. He respects it. Because doubt is not a weakness, it's a sign that you are thinking for yourself. Consider the individuals who have truly transformed our world, the great thinkers, scientists, and philosophers. They all shared one quality, the courage to admit, I do not know yet. They did not settle for fixed ideologies. They continued to refine, test, and observe. And the moment they encountered new evidence, they adapted not because they lacked conviction, but because their love for the truth outweighed their ego in everyday life. This attitude is uncommon but incredibly powerful. It means listening more than you talk. It means asking, could you elaborate on that? Instead of rushing to contradict, it means possessing the strength to sit with the unease of uncertainty without quickly patching it over with an opinion. Most people become frantic in the face of ambiguity, but the Stoic grows still, and this is vital. Uncertainty is not the same as indecision. It is not paralysis, it is presence. It is the capacity to stay with a question long enough to comprehend it without the immediate need to label or resolve it. The wise are slow to form conclusions because they understand that conclusions can be expensive. They don't need to win debates, they want to understand reality. If someone challenges your perspective and your initial impulse is to get defensive, pause. Ask yourself, is my belief founded on experience, on evidence, on careful thought? Or is it based on habit, fear, or another's voice that I never bothered to question? This is the real work of a clear mind, not defending your beliefs, but refining them. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most powerful men in history, wrote daily reminders to himself as if he were a student, not a ruler. He did not presume he was right, simply because he was the emperor. He kept asking, observing, doubting, and correcting. That is how he became wise, not because he was certain, but because he was humble. So here is your challenge. Trade a portion of your certainty for curiosity. Don't be the person who always has to be right. Be the person who is always prepared to learn, because in a world filled with confident noise, a quiet, open mind is the rarest and most powerful thing of all. 8. You are not your thoughts. This may be among the most freeing truths you ever accept, and also one of the most difficult to live by, because for the majority of us, our thoughts feel like our reality. If a thought declares, I am not worthy, we accept it as fact. If the mind whispers, you are failing, we do not challenge it. But the Stoic understands that thoughts are not facts. They are patterns. They are habits. They are noise until you make the choice to observe them, analyze them, and either allow them to drift by or assign them a purpose. The space between you and your mind is where freedom begins. When you realize you can observe a thought without becoming it, your entire world shifts. Suddenly, your anger does not control you. Your fear does not command you. Your anxiety does not define you. You become the observer, the calm presence behind the mental storm. As Epictetus taught, it's not things that disturb us, but our judgment about them. That judgment is a thought, and your power lies in your ability to decide how much weight you give it. In a practical sense, this means learning to sit with a thought instead of running with it. When anxiety insists, this is going to end badly, you pause. You say, thank you, mind, for the warning. But let's examine this more closely. When jealousy arises, you neither suppress it nor let it consume you. You ask, what vulnerability is this thought exposing in me? That act of stepping back is not avoidance, it's mastery. It is the work of a philosopher warrior not to be without thought, but to think with intention. Most people live as if they are passengers in their own minds. They are carried wherever the thought train leads them, into rage, into self-doubt, into fantasy, into guilt. But the Stoic gets off the train. He builds a station, a place for observation, for questioning, for understanding. This is why meditation isn't merely a gentle spiritual exercise. It's a form of mental combat training. The more you practice watching your thoughts, the less they will control you. And here is a crucial point. You do not have to believe a thought just because it feels familiar. In fact, the most dangerous thoughts are often the ones you have practiced the most. I'm always this way. This pattern always repeats. I will never be able to change. These are mental grooves, not truths. And like any groove, they can be disrupted, recarved, and replaced. You are not what your mind endlessly repeats. You are what you choose to reinforce. This is why the Stoic concentrates on cultivating thoughts anchored in reason, virtue, clarity, and purpose, not in daydreams, not in fears, not in external chatter. He trains his mind to be his servant, not his master. This shift also cultivates humility. Because when you see that your mind is just an instrument, not a divine oracle, you stop clinging to every belief as if it was sacred. You become more receptive, less defensive, You stop needing to be right all the time because you are more invested in seeing clearly than in proving a point. So when the storm builds, when doubt or fear or rage begins to pull at you, do not fight it and do not obey it. Step back, observe, and ask, is this thought helping me live with courage and clarity, or is it just noise? In that pause, in that awareness, lies the seed of true strength. The mind is a powerful beast, but with patience and discipline, it can become your greatest ally. Just never forget, you are not your thoughts, you are the thinker. And the thinker always has a choice. Point 9. If you don't control your mind, someone else will. In a world inundated by voices, screens, noise, and countless opinions, your mind is valuable territory and everybody wants to claim a part of it. The news industry, social media algorithms, advertisers, and even the people closest to you all vie for your attention, your focus, and your emotional investment. And if you are not intentional, if you are not mindful, your mind becomes a war where you aren't even the one in command. Think about it. How many of your thoughts today were genuinely yours? How many were adopted from your culture, absorbed from those around you, or implanted by fear? If you scroll on your phone for an hour and come away feeling agitated, resentful, or inadequate, who truly benefited from that hour? The Stoic understands this perfectly. An unguarded mind will inevitably be governed by outside forces. This is not just a philosophical concept. It is a psychological and strategic fact. The human brain is wired for adaptation. It absorbs repetition. It reflects its environment. This means if you are constantly immersed in chaos, drama, superficial values, and noise, your own thinking will begin to mirror that. You will start worrying about trivial problems. You will begin to crave external approval without knowing why. You will react instead of reasoning. And slowly, your inner compass, the one that points you toward what is right, what is real, what is you, begins to vanish under layers of external programming. The Stoics taught, no man is free who is not master of himself. And this mastery begins with mental sovereignty. This isn't about rigid, harsh control, but about awareness, ownership, and the courage to decide what is allowed to occupy your mental space. Because if you do not make that choice, someone else has already made it for you. This is why routines are vital, why silence is vital, why reading, reflection, and solitude are not indulgences. They are defenses. They are how you construct an internal framework strong enough to withstand the pull of a disordered world. Every time you wake up and grab your phone before checking in with yourself, you are handing over your sense of direction. Every time you allow another person's emergency to dictate your priorities, you are giving up control over your own day. Controlling your mind is not about micromanaging every single thought. It's about curating your inputs. It's about deciding what you consume, who you heed, and how you respond. It's about intentionally creating an environment that fosters clarity, instead of one that breeds confusion. And yes, this requires work. It is far easier to scroll and to sit in silence. It is easier to react than it is to reason. But that is precisely the trap, because the easy path is rarely the right one. The Stoic's path is not easy. It is intentional. It demands self-discipline. And that starts with taking command of what you allow into your mind. So, ask yourself today, who is influencing my thoughts? What ideas am I accepting without question? And more importantly, am I the one steering, or am I just a passenger in someone else's story? Because here is the reality. Your mind can be a fortress or a funnel, a weapon or a weakness. The difference lies in how you decide to manage it. 10. Thinking well requires thinking slowly. In a society hooked on speed, on immediate answers, rapid judgments, and quick fixes, we have learned to confuse fast thinking with being smart. The Stoic, however, knows that clarity is never hurried. Wisdom does not sprint. Truth, like a deep current, flows slowly beneath the surface. To find it, you must be still enough to hear it. Modern existence rewards the instant reply. Social media, what conditions us to develop opinions in moments. Headlines are crafted to provoke an emotional response before we've even read the first sentence. Arguments erupt not because of fundamental disagreement, but because nobody paused long enough to actually understand the other person. Thinking, who has been reduced to a performance, not a process, but genuine thought requires time. And the Stoic sees this slowness as a strength, not a weakness. The mind, when rushed, bypasses the most critical element of reasoning, reflection. You can collect all the data in the world, but if you fail to give it space to integrate, it just becomes noise. Imagine pouring water into a glass full of sediment. You cannot force it to be clear. You must wait. You must allow the silt to settle. Thinking slowly is how you let the debris fall so that insight can emerge. Seneca wrote about this in his letters, warning how a person in constant motion never truly sees where they are headed. Haste, he argued, makes even sound decisions perilous. Because without time, we act out of fear, ego, or conditioning. But with time, with silence, we act from a place of depth, intention, and truth. Slowness permits nuance. It allows you to hold to opposing ideas at once without panicking. It creates the space to ask, is this accurate? Is this helpful? Is this even mine? And those questions, not just the data, not the speed up, what distinguish the wise from the merely clever. you might believe you lack the time to slow down. But that is a fallacy. Every error made in a rush will demand more of your time to correct later. Every word uttered in anger will take longer to mend. Every choice made under duress without clarity will become a new problem to solve tomorrow. Thinking slowly is not a delay. It is an investment. The Stoic does not rush to speak. He does not rush to judge. He does not rush to a conclusion. He waits, he reflects, he chooses, because he knows that in a world that never stops moving, the one who can be still is the one in control. He cultivates an inner space between stimulus and response, between emotion and expression. Within that space, he becomes unshakable. Not because he possesses all knowledge, but because he has trained himself not to be hurried by anything. So, when the world demands, decide now, the Stoic quietly muses, let me consider. This moment, this deliberate pause, isn't hesitation. It is a display of strength. It is the act of reclaiming mastery over your attention, your choices, your very life. Thinking slowly isn't about accomplishing less. It's about achieving more, effectively. It involves slicing through the noise with the sharp edge of precision. And it is a discipline, one that requires daily refinement. So, today, when you feel pressure to reply, when urgency obscures your judgment, when emotion cries out for release, pause, breathe, wait, allow the thought to establish roots before it bears fruit. Conflicts. True origin. Conflicts arise from inadequate thinking. At first glance, we believe conflict stems from disagreement, a clash of beliefs, values, or desires. But if you delve deeper, you'll discover that the majority of arguments, ruptures, and wars, both internal and external, aren't truly about the subject being debated. They're about how we think, or rather, our failure to think clearly. When emotion overpowers reason, the mind transforms into a battlefield. A minor comment becomes an assault. A delay feels like rejection. A difference of opinion morphs into betrayal. And why? Because we didn't pause. Because we failed to clarify what was, they said, what was intended, what was real. We reacted to a narrative we constructed, not the reality before us. The Stoics understood that the root of many conflicts isn't malice, it's misjudgment. Epictetus articulated it perfectly. It's not events that disturb us, but our judgments about them. Someone disregards your message and your mind begins to race. Perhaps they're angry. Maybe you've done something wrong. Perhaps they disrespect you. But in reality, they could simply be occupied, weary, or unaware. Your suffering wasn't caused by them. It was caused by your interpretation of their silence. When we anticipate the worst, when we respond before comprehending, when we speak before listening, we amplify tension. However, if we trained ourselves to question the initial surge of emotion, to examine the thought underlying the reaction, we would discover fewer battles to wage. We would realize that most of the time, what we took personally wasn't personal at all. Conflict is often the smoke. Poor thinking is the fire. And the issue isn't solely the discord we generate with others. It's the internal turmoil we create. How many sleepless nights have we endured over something we misinterpreted? How much time have we squandered replaying conversations we never clarified? How many opportunities have we forfeited because we believed we knew someone's intention without even asking? The Stoic doesn't merely seek external peace. He wages war against careless thinking within. He doesn't assume he's correct. He doesn't believe every thought that enters his mind. He learns to challenge himself before challenging others. And because of this, he becomes a more serene presence in any setting. Not because nothing impacts him, but because he filters reality through reason, not reactivity. Imagine if we instilled this in schools, not just facts or formulas, but how to pause before making judgments, how to distinguish feeling from fact, how to disagree without dehumanizing, how to truly hear what someone is saying, not what we fear they mean. That kind of thinking would transform more than just arguments. It would transform cultures. So, the next time tension mounts, try this. Before defending, ask. Before correcting, understand. Before blaming, examine your own thinking. You might find the conflict dissipates without a single word, because clarity, not control, is what neutralizes chaos. Clear thinking is an act of peacemaking. It doesn't signify weakness, it signifies wisdom. And it doesn't mean you avoid confrontation. It means you face it with presence and clarity, not ego. Your true strength, the method of your mind, your greatest power lies not in what you think, but in how you think. We often celebrate ideas, the brilliant insight, the witty quote, the powerful conviction. But the Stoics direct us elsewhere. They remind us that it's not the thought itself that possesses power. It's the structure of our thinking, the process, the manner in which we examine, shape, and respond to the world through thought. That is where strength resides, not in what we believe, but in how we arrive at those beliefs. Consider this. Two individuals can encounter the same setback, the same rejection, loss, or betrayal. One spirals, while the other rises. It's not because one possessed a superior idea. It's because one had a superior framework for thinking. One was trained to reflect before reacting, to discover meaning rather than assign blame, to endure discomfort and seek clarity. That's not intellectual fortune. That's mental discipline. Clear thinking begins with self-mastery. You become less reactive, less fragile, less easily diverted. You cease chasing every thought that crosses your mind. You begin to observe your mind, to challenge it, to slow it down. You start asking, is this true? Is this useful? Is this worthy of my peace? And suddenly, your mind transforms into a tool, not a trap. Marcus Aurelius stated, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. If your thoughts are chaotic, so is your life. But if your thoughts are deliberate, organized, and rooted in reason, your life becomes clear, resilient, grounded. You are no longer a victim of emotion or noise. You are a craftsman, shaping your perception with care. This is what distinguishes those who drift from those who direct, those who are controlled by their minds versus those who control them. Most people are unaware they can think differently. They've inherited scripts. They mistake noise for truth. But the Stoic is different. He chooses how to think, not what to think. And in that choice, he builds unshakable strength. So, if you desire to live with clarity, if you wish to be emotionally grounded, focused, and free, don't just fill your mind with information. Train it, challenge it, rewire it. Don't just adopt new thoughts. Learn to think through them. Don't just react, reflect, ask better questions. Build mental systems that withstand pressure. Your greatest power isn't a clever quote or a borrowed idea. It's the mind that can question, pause, interpret, and choose. That is what makes you untouchable. That is what makes you free. When you reflect on your life, you'll observe that it wasn't the external chaos that nearly broke you. It was the internal confusion, the noise, the impulses, the unchecked assumptions. That is what clouded your judgment. That is what made you doubt your worth, lose your focus, and react instead of respond. But clarity alters everything. These 12 Stoic lessons weren't designed to make you smarter. They were designed to make you wiser, to equip you with tools, not just truths. To remind you that genuine strength doesn't originate from having all the answers. It comes from repeatedly asking the right questions, especially when life grows. The Stoics didn't teach thinking for thinking's sake. They taught it so we could live better, lead calmer lives, love more deeply, and suffer less. Because when your mind is clear, your path becomes clear. When your thoughts are pure, your heart feels lighter. And when your reactions are rooted in reason, you become immovable. Not cold, but composed. Not detached, but discerning. Not unfeeling, but unbreakable. So, the next time the world presses in on you, pause, observe, think like the philosopher you were meant to be, not in theory, but in practice. Not to impress others, but to liberate yourself. That is the quiet revolution of Stoic thinking. It doesn't demand applause. It simply requires being lived. If this episode helped you think more clearly, take a moment to breathe, then share it with someone who needs it. Subscribe for more, reflect deeply, and as always, stay grounded, stay calm, and stay free. Don't forget to hit the bell icon button. Thank you.